This room is called the gun room. The gun case is over there on the wall, on the south wall, and actually there are a couple of guns in it. It's really hard to see with the light reflection, but that was what the family called this room. This room was really the billiards room that never happened. Theodore Roosevelt, because he was a childhood asthmatic, didn't smoke, didn't really drink that much. It became another study and escape for Theodore Roosevelt. TR did most of his writing by dictation, and he would typically do that in the morning, and he would have the clerk typist then come up here. He or she would type up the information that he dictated, and Theodore Roosevelt would come up here in the afternoon to review his work and to escape the hustle and bustle of downstairs. And I like to talk about this because I think you get an understanding of the family life. The children loved being up here with TR, and of course he was a real family man. He loved his children. One of my favorite stories is that he frequently would leave people at a certain time of the day, 4 o'clock, saying that he had a very important appointment. And he would leave congressmen, senators, businessmen, ministers, saying that he had this 4 o'clock appointment that he had to keep, and quit their company, and people were often surprised to find that his appointment was to play with his children. And they would see him on the lawn roughhousing or playing football. In addition to the 6 children that the Roosevelts had, Roosevelt had sold off properties adjoining his from the parcels that he originally bought to other family members. So there were an additional 10 cousins. So there were 16 Roosevelts from about the years 17 or 18 on down to toddler that ran all over the area, ran all over the household. And of course, during the periods of activity with the summer White House, the White House staff, the Secret Service, it must have been quite an amazing time, with the noise level probably rivaling that of a 4th grade class. And so Roosevelt would come up here to escape. You see his desk over there on the side is not over the window, not near the window. He put his desk to the side so he wouldn't be tempted to look out and enjoy nature, that he would actually work on his writing. You see the inkwell there on the desk is actually a rhino foot made into an inkwell. We're going to go downstairs now to the 2nd floor, to the family bedroom floor. Okay, this room is the nursery, and you can see it's obviously fitted out that way. There's a bassinet that's screened with its actual separate lid. A prominent feature of this room is the big wardrobe, which is part of the master bedroom set of furniture that came from the big house on 57th Street. Thomas Nast was a well-known illustrator who was responsible for American icon symbols. He sort of created the American image of Santa Claus. He also created the political symbols of Uncle Sam and the donkey and the Republican and the elephant that are used to denote the Democratic and the Republican parties. This was a gift to Theodore Roosevelt when he was in the White House, and you can see that there are little notes on the stockings that are the names of the Roosevelt children. This room had several different purposes during the family's time period here. For a while it was called the gate room because there was actually a gate that went across the door, and you could put toddlers in here and they would stay in. It was Ethel's room for a while. It was also known as the sick room because the room is adjacent to the master bedroom, and the sick child would be readily attended to by Mrs. Roosevelt, and ultimately became the sick room for Theodore Roosevelt. In his last days, he used this room, and he died in that bed on January 6th, 1919. This room is the master bedroom, and you can see that the furniture here matches that wardrobe that we looked at a little bit ago. Once again, it's from the big house on 57th Street. Frank Furness was the designer and decorator of that house. The whole house was done in this wonderful arts and crafts style. This is one of my favorite rooms in the house. I love it. It's a little corner room up here on the northwest side. Must have been pretty cold in the winter. Mrs. Roosevelt's famous line about heating Sagamore Hill was that it was so cold it was like heating a birdcage. The photographs here, well, there are several of Quentin. He was the youngest son who went off in the First World War. He was in the Army Air Corps. He was shot down after about 25 days of service. He was only 18 years old. It was a great loss that probably neither Mr. Roosevelt nor Mrs. Roosevelt ever really quite recovered fully. And there are other family mementos along here as well. In a time when it was common to have Mr. and Mrs. bedrooms adjoining, it's interesting to note that both Theodore Roosevelt's parents shared a single bed chamber, as did Theodore Roosevelt and his wife throughout their life. Although after Roosevelt's health declined, especially after his trip to Brazil in 1914, he used the sick room, and Mrs. Roosevelt moved to the south bedroom, probably because it was warmer. This room was Theodore Roosevelt's dressing room, and up those two steps was the bathroom that was added by the family. Those are TR's boots and his riding cloak on the wall. So we're going to go now from the family bedroom end over here to the pair of guest rooms that we have on display. The Roosevelts loved entertaining. They had guests frequently. You see there's a single bed there with a wonderful friendship quilt. Each of those little panels was created by a separate woman, and they were all put together to make a signature document called a friendship quilt. And we think it was a Rough Rider reunion piece or something like that. And then we have another double guest room over here on the other side. Mrs. Roosevelt was used to managing a household and being frugal and careful. We know that she purchased things from estate sales and yard sales just the way people do today. She had a limited income because Roosevelt lost a lot of money when he went out west to the Dakota Territory, whereas he had a ranch and the animals died because of severe winter. So Mrs. Roosevelt had to be careful about running the household. This is the south bedroom, and this is the room that Mrs. Roosevelt used in her latter years. She lived on for almost 30 years after her husband died. He died in 1919. She died in 1948. This room is on the south side of the house, so in the winter it was warmer. And she spent her last years in this room. One of the interesting things about Sagamore Hill is that although she continued here for her next 29 and a half years, she didn't change things. You know, a lot of times when people have a spouse die, they move, they give the children the furniture, they change things, they paint everything white, they paint everything blue. She didn't do any of that. Basically stayed here, closed off the north room because it was probably a big heat drain, and continued probably enjoying her husband's memory and the memory of being here with her family and children. Of course, some of the children lived nearby. They were frequent visitors. You saw in the gate room that there was the other crib there. Certainly the children came. Ethel Derby lived in town. Her daughter Ethel lived nearby. She was a frequent visitor and a great champion of her father. So that was all part of Sagamore Hill becoming a museum. This is the west door, and before I say goodbye to you and your tour of Sagamore Hill, I want to talk about this inscription over the west door. Qui plantavit curabit is the motto that was on the Roosevelt family crest. The Roosevelts were aristocratic people from Holland, and they came over here when the New World was beginning in 1640s. Qui plantavit curabit means he who has planted shall preserve. It's a motto that we think that Roosevelt lived by, and certainly his gift of us of the American conservation ethic and the lands he set aside and the marks that he made on the American people and American public are lasting impressions of this. Thanks for visiting Sagamore Hill.